Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our this special edition of Let's Talk About Data. We're going to discuss a lot of things. One of the one of the key item which is floating everywhere and everybody is confused. And I think one of the biggest challenge which AI is facing is this keyword which we are going to discuss, which is business concepts, what these business context are. But before we start, I can see that we have a lot of participants. Let me introduce all of you. We have Andrew from Australia. Hi, Andrew. We have Remco. Hi, Remco. Remco is
Hi
from
there.
Netherlands. We have Patrick. Patrick is from Sweden. We have Marco from Netherlands again. We have Nathan from Switzerland. Awesome. Then we have Lars from Sweden as well. Shane. Shane is originally from New Zealand, but he has moved to UK nowadays. Yeah, Shane? Okay, awesome. So just for our audience, that this session is all our participants and prestigious guests are mostly from data modeling world. And just to set the context, one of the biggest challenge nowadays in AI world, especially AI tools, when we talk about when we talk about ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Cursor, all those kind of tools which allow developers to do developing using vibe coding and XYZ, a fast way of doing development, right? And one of the biggest challenge for all those tools are unable to understand what we are asking them to do. What is the context, right? So that is one of the challenge. I keep admitting people my apologies. So a few months back, one of our best friend, Andrew, you can see him there. He has raised one question or one post on LinkedIn about business objects, business concepts. So this whole discussion came into being from there. And then I thought, why not I invite all you people over here and we discuss what this business concept slash business objects are and what is its important in which different data modeling, how this whole thing works. So just to set the context right, I give an example. I won't go into detail. So correct me if I'm wrong, because I will address you, Andrew, to start with, right? Because the question came from you. Correct me if I'm wrong, just to set the context. When we talk about customer, right, in our corporate world, sales see customer as a buyer, finance see customer as a billing entity, CRM sees customer as a relationship profile, risk sees customer as a exposure entity, logistics sees customer as a delivery destination, and compliance see customer as a legal entity. These are different semantic of the same thing, right? So just to start just to give the floor to you, are we going into the right direction? This is what your question was, and so now floor is all yours. Let's start this discussion.
I can't remember what the question was, to be honest with you. It was that long ago. But yes, you're right. It it's about the language that we use within the business, and I think we all have. And I think it's Ronald G. Ross. I don't know if you've read any of his stuff, but he's written a book about this, about what concepts are, and basically saying that a concept is what we perceive it in our own minds. It's not something you write down on paper. It's how we perceive it, and everybody perceives the same set of circumstances very, very differently. So just putting it down under a single title, customer, isn't going to cut it. So we obviously need to expand on that and make it clearer as to from whose perspective and on what that term actually means. And you went through that list yourself. You went customer is this from this from this. Those terms that you used are probably more accurate terms rather than just a generic customer type statement. So yes, I think it's a big deal. We can't use the same terms across the board, especially when you're using something like AI, because you've got to give it that context. But yeah, it's something worth discussing. So here
Okay,
we are.
awesome. So just to set again the context is I will have majorly two questions. One is what is this, which we are discussing. So we
Mm-hmm.
will request each guest to tell us their their point of view. And second is how this can fit into a particular data modeling technique. So next, let's go to Shane. What do you think about it?
Yeah, look, I think it's always been important. For decades I've been working in data. We were lucky that we always had humans in the loop. So if you look at what would happen, stakeholder would ask a question, analysts would go look at all the data, they'd understand the business terminology. If they were good, they'd do the data work, and then they'd hand back a count of customers or a count of orders. With the advent of using LLMs and Gen AI, the human in the loop's not there, so we need to give it the context. So it's been a problem forever, right? And not one we've solved. We have patterns that help us solve it. We can use frameworks like who does what to try and get the terms out of those stakeholders that they use on a regular basis. We can put words in front of order that makes it different from the next time we use the order. We can use some of the stuff that Marco does where we say the concept and an example. So Shane Gibson, the customer, or customer Shane Gibson, I can't remember which way around it is, Marco. So we're applying additional context when we're using that term. But the key thing, as Andrew said, is we can't use the same word for many different things. We couldn't before, and we definitely can't now.
Yeah, just to add one more question here. In your information product canvas, when you are interviewing your customer, do you discuss these terms from your angle, or you ask them to define it for you?
I'm getting their language. So the core business events is using the who does what pattern. Remco uses it, Lawrence Core uses it, Marco uses it. There's a lot of people that use that really core pattern. And so I want their term. And then when they use a term I don't understand, then I'll ask them how they define it. Because I need to understand what a customer is, what an order is, and what a product is if I'm going to build a product.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thanks, Shane. Let's go to Nathan. I will go to the core modelers later. Nathan.
Yeah, you can go. Talk to the ones like
that's very intentional, guys.
So I think from my perspective, there's a few things here, and obviously importance. When we talk about, let's say the two examples you gave earlier, and I think you might have done this intentionally, but you give one view of the same thing by different views of the function, which is there's a customer. Right? There is a thing called the customer. It is you are doing business with an entity that is the customer, right? But that might be called different things amongst different functions. And then you've got the second view, which is the same name for different things, right? A sales order is not the same as a production order, is not the same as a purchase order, right? They're quite clearly different things. And I think there you have to overlay really, let's say, the semblance of what actually happens, what are the events and that are happening in the business, and what are the business processes that are affecting these events? Is it order to cash? Is it purchase to pay? Whatever. And if you look at it from let's say an ERP lens or a CRM lens, these are often very, very similar, right? But there's always going to be tweaks in each individual business that need to be dealt with. The similarities are often between businesses are often much higher than the differences, right? Especially given the fact that so many companies have aligned on the same ERPs. There will be concepts that's different, and you need to deal with that. But there's a lot of similarity in these things across companies and across different ERPs. So one of my things is I've spent quite a lot of time needing to bring data together from 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ERPs and try to make sense of it. That type of situation is quite it's about finding commonality as well as finding what really happened.
Okay, awesome. Now it's a time to jump into the core data modelers. First, I will bring in Marco because he's right at the start of the whole data modeling stuff. FCOIM. So before we really go into FCOIM, right, how you define these things, let's go one step back where we are discussing, how do you see these business concepts when you're discussing with your customers?
Well, from the methodology FCOEM, these concepts actually arise from the natural language as used by the business. And in a more broader perspective, IT is trying to automate their communication. So if we don't start by documenting their documentation, and I'm not just saying, oh, let's just write down this word and we know it, because everybody knows that as soon as you open a dictionary, one word can have 6 different meanings. So, which doesn't even touch the jargon going on in any specific organization. So there is definitely a need for some sort of glossary or dictionary to at least identify the words, but the approach that the FCOEM takes is you, as a business domain expert, you need to be able to talk to your colleagues because that's what needs to be done. And if you can capture that communication, then and you examine that, that's where the concepts and the terminology arises. It is not something that is happening in the back room in a technical database somewhere where we try to label technical details with business terms. It's totally the other way around.
Okay, awesome. So thank you, Marco. Now we have next 3 gentlemen. They are from Assembled Data Modeling. So we first go to Remco, Anchor from Data Vault Prospector. So before we jump into really technical, the next question where we will see where it sits, we want to understand how do you see this business objects, subject, concepts, all those things, right? We have different names for same thing. How do you see these things?
Well, from my an ensemble perspective for data, I think Patrick and Lars will definitely agree on that one. It's more about, and think the same what Shane was saying and Marco as well, is it's the definition the business gives to it. If you're talking about a customer from multiple perspectives, then the question is, does the organization as a whole see a customer as a unique identifiable person? And the only thing what matters is how they interact with the organization, if they are in a different, if we can see them as different business terms. So then we need to give it a marketing customer to get an extra name word to it to make the distinction. It's all about the definition. What do you think about a customer? And if it says it's a person coming into our website, going to make a sale, we have to build them, etc., etc. It's all in the definition of a customer. Then that's very simple. That's just one customer. Same if people are talking about an order, right? And Nathan, what Shane was also writing down, you said, well, there's a sales order, a production order. You already get the distinction. And they're all kind of the same stuff. I work for an organization in healthcare, and they're talking about a bed. It's my famous example. What's the bed? And then depending on how you're talking to it, it's either the physical thing where you lay down on, or it's a place in a hospital room where you can be treated or resting. And the way we found out, and that's one of the things in ensemble modeling, which I think is a strong point as well, is if you hear a term, let's categorize it. What do you think it is? Is it an event, a person, a place, a thing, or something else? And as soon as people are doubting, oh, this could be a person or a thing or a place, like for bed, then you know there are 2 different definitions, although they're talking about a bed. If they're talking about an order and they are saying, well, it's an event, then you still need to go into a definition question. What do you mean with an order? And I think that's where I nicked some stuff from FCOEM as well, especially on my relationships between business terms, because the term on itself is important, but the relationship is important, to really write down, what do you mean with this relationship? What kind of relationship is this? Giving more clear identification to it. So I think the most important one is to really ask questions back to organizations, to the business people, right? People doing their day-to-day business. What is your terminology? What do you mean with this one? And it's not our I think you said German, Shane, or French, whatever. It's just we need to find a common language, and we need to language everybody understands. And that's what we try to put in our model. and don't try to use stupid abbreviations.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Thanks for the closing one, Remco. Don't use stupid things, right? So that's very subjective, I would say. So let's jump to the next one. Focal, Patrick. Patrick, what's your take
Yeah.
on this one?
I mean, Remco said it all. No, but what can I add? I mean, I agree with all of us. The thing is that when we're doing data modeling, as for me at least, when I'm doing information models or whatever, it's about communication, and I think that's the most important part. And if we want to communicate, we need to have clear definitions. There is a difference between our normal life, where we communicate like we do today, and we sort of understand each other on a fuzzy level, and it's good enough most of the time. But when we are working with IT systems and we're going to go into AI and stuff like that, we have to be distinct, and we need to have a common view on a common definition. Now, I think one of the things that are lacking in the discussion today in our community is, what is a good definition? How do you make a good definition? What does it contain? What should it sort of represent to become a good definition? And that is one of the things I think I don't see almost no discussions on the internet about what is a definition. How do you define things? We all come up with unique terms, which is really good, but a term doesn't say anything without a definition. And the quality of the definition is what decides the quality of the communication you will have and the AI's ability to execute in your data model. So that's, well, more or less what I could add.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. Last but not the least, the anchor. We go towards Lars. Lars, we would love to hear from you, because so many questions are already popping up in my head.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, in anchor modeling, we always try to produce models that are close to the business. So we have meetings with business people and try to get the terminology out of them, so we know which models to build that sort of reflects what the business is doing and what they are talking about as well. So they are familiar with the terminology when they look at the model. So looking at what your example that you had with a customer, that could look quite different depending on which part of the business is looking at the customer. I try to look at it as an identification process. So if you come from, say, the CRM direction of the business, and you have perhaps an email address, and you use that email address to figure out who we sent this email to, and it boils down to being you, Mustafa. We sent an email to you. And we draw the boundary there. You're sort of the thing at the end of that identification process. And we do the same thing from sales. We have a subscription, and we want to know who is paying for this subscription. We have an identification process. Maybe it's some subscription numbers and stuff like that. And it also boils down to you, Mustafa. It's the same thing. So when this happens, so there are different ways in the business to identify the same thing in the end. Then in Anchor, we say that this thing needs to be its own business concept in the model, rather than having like a sales customer and a CRM customer. We have one customer, but it could also be the case then that if you're coming from the CRM direction of the business, you're interested in maybe 5 different attributes that you have. And if you're coming from the sales department, it could be one of those are interesting for them as well, but it's 4 other attributes that are interesting as well for them. So it doesn't have to be a perfect overlap of the attributes of the customer that you're interested in, depending on where you're coming from. And even so, we put them into the same business concept, and you have 10 or 15 or 20 different attributes on the customer, but not every attribute is interesting for every part of the organization. But there is a small issue here, because we put them into, we sort of lock them into a schema. And once we lock them into this schema, it's hard to tell which of these attributes are interesting for which part of the organization. because that's how databases work today. So, and also in anchor modeling, we do this. And maybe you can have a type on a customer and say that this is this type of customer or something like that. But that's something that I've been working on. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I'm also working on something called transitional modeling, which is sort of like a superset of anchor modeling. And in there, you have a flexible schema instead. So you can define multiple different schemas at the same time. So you could have one schema, you can have this core customer thing in the bottom, and then you can have one schema that fits the legal department, another schema that fits the sales department, another schema that fits the CRM. And looking at those schemas, you see the stuff that's only interesting for you.
Awesome. Actually, one of my question is related to that. Thanks for raising, Lars. Nathan.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on that. I think we talk a lot when we were talking about data modeling about the core business itself and actually what we're storing. But I think everything you said there becomes even more noticeable when you start aggregating them up into metrics. So like you might be able to store in your raw data warehouse, whatever you call it, whichever you call it, right? Your individual customers, like you said, but it's it's those fields, those definitions, those stages that the customer is going through that then defines, okay, how many is marketing counting? How many is sales counting? How many is finance counting? What are all these things being added up to? So I think and this is where I think the AI angle comes even more, or the AI readability of these definitions becomes even more powerful and important, is that, yeah, you get your raw data, right? But how you aggregate is so important, and how you track that definition all the way through from this is the source to the metric that's being pushed is crucial.
Remco.
Yeah, I'm just jumping on this question because you are mentioning how AI can help us, etc., etc. I am working currently with I already have a data modeling AI agent or assistant, I would call him. I'm doing now locally, but for me, that modeling assistance using AI is not something where you can say, here are all my source systems, have fun, and just create a new data model out of it. It's all about really give me a business case, and it could be given any business case. It could be even the notes out of what we are talking about now, right? If I get the note or the video, I can just push it in, and it gives back. These are the core business concepts, so the most important terms being discussed. These are the relationships in between them, etc., etc., etc. Of course, out of this call or webinar, it's kind of stupid. But if you can imagine, if you're talking to business people about what's your organization doing, what's going all about, and you push it in, you get the information out. There is no reason, at least in my opinion, to just say, oh, here are all my 20, 50, 180 sources I'm having, all this information. AI, have fun, figure it out, because then it's going completely the wrong way for sure.
Yeah.
I think you can bet it's going the wrong way, can't you? And get
let's be honest, we've seen it before, right? Back in the days, and I'm an old guy, I know, but back in the day we had ETL tools and tool vendors saying you don't need to model anymore. We can give us the sources, and we can just combine everything. And they're just doing it based upon what AI is still going to do, by the way, if you're not adding more information. Based on naming, they're going to make the connection. Oh, this table has the same name, this key has the same name, so this should be a relationship. Completely off, for sure, because it's not reflecting the business or reflecting what's actually being done. So we always need to get from a business perspective, and that's where I do like where we started off with the question Andrew didn't remember anymore about the customer from different perspectives. And I think it's all has to do with how your organization is talking about some stuff, and even within your department are talking about stuff.
Yeah, so I do remember the question. I am coming towards that. So which I will relate to you. The obvious question pop up because we are talking about the definitions, right? Now, when we think about the definitions, our mindset goes toward a centralized approach. But now world is moving towards the federated approach, where there will be small data products everybody will be asking, right? We are talking about OLAP world, we are not talking about OLTP work just to segregate that, right? Now, when we are going into federated approach, in federated approach, we have this MASH concept, we have this DAS concept, XYZ, where to define these definitions at domain level, at at a centralized level, organization level, or at a product level. How? Andrew, I think you were trying to say something. You said, then we go to Shane. Shane raised his hand.
No, I think we've all kind of looked at this, which is the most appropriate model. A mesh model is great, but all those parties can't work independently. You need something central. But for it to be effective, you want to try and minimize whatever that central thing is. So yeah, you're not going to have all your warehousing development as a central unit. That's not the mesh model. So what do you need in that centralized capability that enables all of those teams to work efficiently and stay on the same, singing from the same hymn sheet, if you like. So yeah, it's metadata. It's basically that model. It's that context. And if that's something that is small enough that can be managed centrally, that everybody then refers to, then I can see that's how mesh can work. So a data model, yes, perfect example. So here's your definitions of these things. If you have a different definition for those things, you need to tell the central unit what that is. So you say customers this, I don't think it is, it's something else. Well, let us know. We'll put an entry in the central repository to say, here's another definition as seen by these people. So that everybody gets the view of the whole thing. It's creating a shared understanding. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. And then as long as you have that, then everybody is then free to build. As long as they're following particular standards, you should end up with reasonably consistent products at the edge.
Actually, I absolutely agree on that one. That is where I also see that centralized repository need to be there. Either it's DAS architecture or it is MASH architecture or XYZ. The definitions need to sit at one place.
Will be quick. This is maybe just because you get old. I don't know. I mean, the thing about the mesh and the decentralization is not something new. We're all working in a circle where we go from centralized to decentralized and back and trying to figure out different ways of doing things. And I mean, I always had sort of a question about the mesh thinking that exactly as Andrew says, if we do it on domain level and we don't communicate between the domains, then we will fail anyway, even if we are really efficient in each domain. So
yeah.
But they say that it's because we want to scale. The central part is what holds us back. Well, building the central model and the central definition and the metadata around that's what takes time. That's what's hard. So that's always been my question. What scaling are you talking about, really? Okay, maybe you can build a little bit quicker, but the hard work is always getting to those central definitions. That takes time. Building something normally doesn't take that much time, especially now when there's so much automation tools and stuff around. So it's just been a question in my head for a long time about how does mesh really scale when we need a central definition.
Shane.
I think we need to have a dose of reality as data practitioners. There's federation, decentralization. It's not happening. It's like when we had big data. Yes, there were some fan companies that had petabytes, and gigabyte, whatever the hell it was. And we all looked at their writing going, we need to do that. It's bullshit. Every company had, they're all under a terabyte, right? They don't have those problems. Yes, there are some example case studies where teams are being federated out to organizations, but that's not what's happening today with LLMs. What's happening today is people are demanding NCP access to BigQuery, Snowflake, whatever, and they're chaos, right? And we've seen this before. When we had the BI tools come out like Tableau, we saw a democratization of creating the front-end reports, and we saw chaos, and we saw what little single source of truth we had disappear. That is getting 100 times worse today. And so if we think, that we're going to manage this in a structured way, it's rubbish, right? It's chaos is coming. If we think we can regress back to we need to do all the work up front, well, when we lost data modeling as an art, when the modern data stack came out, that proves it's not going to happen. If we listen to our library sciences friends, right, who are telling us that we need to spend ages doing ontologies and taxonomies up front before we even touch the data with an LLM, they're actually right, but it's not happening. And I'm seeing lots of organizations open up their data knowing it's wrong, right? Like they're not even hitting their consumption layer. They're letting them go back into the kitchen or back to raw, right, in the layered architecture, and they're letting people just query shit and then get the answer. And what they're not doing is they're not capturing the context of those questions, the language being asked, the query that gets generated, the reasoning path that those models do. So for me, the one thing I recommend everybody does now is when you open up your data with an MCP, because you will be told to, you need to find a way of capturing those conversations that people were having with the LLMs, because that's the gold that we're now going to have to harvest. And we have to make sure we don't do what we did in the modern data stack, which is say, yeah, you can just throw a tool at the source system and that's a model. Well, actually, you can write a YAML file and that's a model. What we need to do is say, okay, how can we take what's been done and really, really quickly generate the context that's accurate and then push it into the system so that the next question that gets asked by the MCP, by that chief executive using Claude, actually has a better chance of giving a response. So that's my view of where we are in today's world.
Awesome.
Been there before, right? I got the T-shirt, return to the data model, right? I'm not changing it to return of the ontology, right? But I think to change it to return of something.
Okay, as per the sequence, next hand, Nathan.
Yeah, I think this topic about all the federated stuff, business is inherently centralized, right? There, like most businesses, you've got two general centers, right? You've got CEO, CFO, whatever, CRO, sales, and everything feeds up into one P&L. In a divisional business, you might have where there's differences, then you might have multiple ones of these. But in general, most businesses have a centralized point. So especially when it comes to metrics, right? You have to when you're aggregating metrics up from the raw data, they have to make sense at all levels, not just at the lowest level. And it's going to be the CEO, it's going to be the CFO who's going to call out, why are these things are saying different things? Why is CFO? Why are your numbers different to the difference? I think it's Shane. I've seen a couple of your numbers there. Was it? Sorry, I can't see some of these comments coming in. I think behaviors decentralized. Yeah,
look, I don't want to jump in and I don't want to jump in and sidetrack you, but my view is organizations pretend they're centralized. We have an org chart, we have this idea of OKRs and rolling up. When we look at the actual behavior, we look at the use of Excel, right? It is a decentralized organization. However, the one place it is often centralized is money. Like you said, finance, hold purse strings, and that.
But that's the business though, Shane. That's the business. All the business rolls up into the central P&L. The what gets told to the street is the business of it. Now, there may be other activities that go on that are decentralized that are different, but the business is centralized, and the metrics that then the board and the CFO, the CEO are often they're more centralized than others. They've fallen apart into decentral because of things like mergers and acquisitions and things that happen that and business processes splitting up and doing things incorrectly. But the centralized is the nature, but the decentralized is the chaos underneath. I think we're probably
okay.
Yeah.
Let me twist this one, right? We are going towards Lars and then Marco, right? This decentralized to centralized and then again to decentralized, which normally I call it federated approach. I think that is where things getting better in my point of view, where you will have implementations and ownership autonomies that are decentralized concept, but you will have a centralized a small team, a small repository which will be connected like hub and spoke model and manage everything one place. That's I will come to that later on. Lars, you want to say something?
Yeah. I think a lot of organizations, when they talk about doing some sort of federated thing like Microsoft Fabric or other products that are building upon this idea.
Those are not fabric. They just call it name, but it's not fabric.
Yeah. But anyway, I think what they do first, they underestimate the complexity of integration. They sort of think that integration is something that can happen on the fly when you query a federated model, and that's not the case for us who've been working practically with data warehouses. We know that integration can be extremely messy and complicated at times, and can also need to be done differently over time. So the other part is, how do these federated solutions guarantee that you have some sort of consistency over longer periods of time? I think those two are the two big issues that I see with the federated idea. And I also see this cycle that Patrik is talking about, and I've also been talking about it earlier, the thing that we're going between these two different opposites, like centralization and decentralization. And I'm pretty sure that once we've played this phase of decentralization out, we're going to converge into a centralized idea again. Which is something I was talking about in the model-driven organization, which is sort of an organization where you build the organization around the data model. So the data model sort of becomes the heart of the organization.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're heading in the future.
Yeah, I think now next we'll go to Remco, but I want to add one comment here, right? When we talk about data modeling, there are many data modeling. I think that is where people get confused, because physical data modeling is something which is really attached with the data product. But before physical data modeling, there are many information modeling, business modeling. That is where I think Marco also come into picture, because way before when you really go into the product. So Marco, you wanted to say something?
Uh,
You have been
no,
waiting since inception, I know.
I'm taking notes because there's so many things that I want to respond to. So I mean, I love Nathan's talk, but I've seen companies that came out of 40 mergers and there was nothing centralized anywhere. They struggled with the word location because nobody could let go of their context and their definition of the word location. I've seen organizations that completely agreed on the word inventory and the definitions until they hit the data and realized they were all talking about different things. So there's so much going wrong. And this is where, a lot of people talk about we need to have tools. We have people that talk about, we need to have the right technology. But in the end, it is humans that do the work continuously. And I think that's where tools fall short, technology falls short, and we need to have a method of working. And there is very, very, very little method of working in IT. Yes, everybody understands the UML class diagram because I can draw it, but what is the method to come to that? And so there's a lot going wrong because there's really not a method of working. And if you have a large organization, a method of working becomes crucial. And why it doesn't fail is largely due to personal work. People actually understand the data way better than anybody else because they look at it from their context and they say, that makes sense or it doesn't make sense. And when they get data from a different system, a different department that they don't understand, they will call a colleague and say, how does this work? And it's the human effort that actually closes the gap. And what you see now is with all the technology and all the tools and with the tsunami of LLM, the LLM does not know how to close that gap. It will take a viewpoint. It will start with a biased training set, and it will start from what it's trained on what that could potentially mean and how it is all linked. But it entirely skips the human effort because that effort is not documented anywhere. And on the part where tech says, okay, it's an integration issue, it's an integration issue. Yes, on a system level, it's integration, but really, if you look at it, it's language alignment. Are we talking about the same thing? And the only way to answer that is to go back to the business, talk to the people that actually talk about that data in their daily job.
Okay,
So,
awesome. That's a good take actually. Because we have 15 minutes left for 60-minute session. I do not know whether you guys have a hard stop or not. We are not closing it, Remco. Yeah, I just go ahead.
You want to refer to me anyway. I just see a
Yes.
pop-up message on Shane on the chat. I think this is also a thing we need to be clear about, right? I don't disagree with you, Shane, but I think we need to be even more elaborate to it, right? If you're listening to what Juha Korpela is saying about conceptual, logical, and physical modeling, right? A conceptual model is more indeed on the level of the whole business, but then you go to logical, then you go, okay, now I'm going to create a model which is intent to either do a part of the operation, or it's going to do something for the warehouse, or something for the. So I think we need to be careful when we're talking about data modeling, that we all have an idea what the data model is, and we all think they are completely different. So that's one thing. And Shane, I'm going to give it to you, no worries. To get to Marco's point as well, and it's been said before on organization, I work for an organization where they had a dozen different region managers, and every region manager had his own calculation of profitability. And of course, they had their own calculation because the one what is best profitable for themselves, right, for the incentives that they're getting, the bigger car, etc. And then they need the organization asks, what is our profitability? And we want to compare parts of the regions with each other. And it went completely off. And then we found out that there were different definitions. What we did, because I was more on the reporting side, we created 13 different definitions for profitability. One on a organization level, and then 12 for each region manager. And the reason why we did it, because there was disagreement on what the actual definition of profitability was between the region managers. And I said, you know what, if you talk within your own region, use your own terminology, use your own definition, use your own calculation. But when you talk to management, higher management, or compare with each other, we are using the one centralized. Within a year, everybody was using the centralized one because they were terrified to maintain both. Plus, also the incentives and the lease car was depending on the generic level nowadays, so not the smaller one.
That's what I've seen that many times, Remco. It's
that's a good thing, right? Then I just added the name of the manager to profitability John, profitability Karen, profitability whatever, and just everybody knew who's talking about. But I know that Shane wants to. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, we have hand raised Lars. After that, we'll go last question with Andrew before we open the floor for audience. Lars.
Yeah, I just wanted to tie this back to AI because I think what we're talking about now, what we're all doing is we're doing good things. We're extracting information from the business and we're producing models in the end. And the result of such a modeling session is some sort of artifact. And for all of us, we're working with different techniques. So these artifacts look very different depending on who's been doing these things. And these are the artifacts that we should feed to the AI because they are the perfect context for the AI to take further, to understand the business, to understand the work that we've been doing to describe the business. So I think once you have these artifacts and they are good, they are a very good context and basis for AI to continue working with. But we have no standard here. We are all doing this differently, which could be may be bad, because it could be better if we had some sort of agreement upon or found the best ways to present this to AI so it becomes the perfect context for AI.
Absolutely, and that is where I think that centralized governance or centralized repository come into picture. I had many questions, but I will summarize that into one where everybody is looking into it. I will ask this to Andrew because Andrew is having this hooks where he connects all kind of table. He doesn't care which model is there. He just create hook on top of it and make sense of the data. So I think this question will be very much will very much relate to Andrew because he want to know what data is there, what definitions is correct, so his hook can work. So Andrew, what's your take on it? How do you decide? It's very confusing, right?
I guess one of the questions I've always had is how much modeling is enough?
Yeah.
And what gives you the best bang for buck? Because I've seen many organizations go down this data modeling and building a full enterprise model and burning years and years and years of effort, and it has absolutely zero benefit to the organization. So what is the absolute minimum that we can do? And that's essentially where the hook approach comes from. And it is all focused around business concepts. Business concepts is the kind of the single thing I think we can all agree on is a really useful thing. With hook, we don't go any further than just defining those business concepts. We don't start looking at the relationships because the relationships are inherent within the data itself. So prescribing those relationships up front in the context of a data warehouse is perhaps more effort than is required. It's not giving you any more benefit. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that an enterprise model is really useful. It's a great communication tool for the business. But when you get outside of that and you're starting to implement things, then the type of modeling approach that you need depends upon what you're building. So if you're building an application, yes, you need a logical model, physical model, absolutely. But in a data warehouse, because you're at the other end of the spectrum, you're taking information from those systems, then you're really at the mercy of how those systems have been modeled. So why should we be building a full model, a target structure, if you like, for the data warehouse when it's already been defined within the source systems? And that's where that hook approach comes from, because there's a lot of effort in trying to massage the data from those source systems into something which everybody can agree on, which they probably won't agree on in the data warehouse. So it's a very kind of more relaxed approach into the data warehouse. The approach is kind of more like a library, if you like. It's how do we organize the data? When we build a library, we don't go, well, how does geography relate to history? How does history relate to fiction, non-fiction? You don't do that. You just have a mechanism for, here's where I want to place a book. And then you just give that to whoever's using the library, and off they go, and they can go and find the information they need. So that's the kind of level. That's enough. For me, that's enough. I'm sure some of the other guys will have a very, very different opinion to that. I know Remco does.
So before we open the floor for our audience, anyone want to say something about these things? Anyone? Okay, awesome. I can see Martin there. Martin, you're there. I'm unmuting yourself. I know you had a question. Martin, you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, awesome. So shoot your question. You told me you have a question.
I already wrote it down.
It's gone down there, Shane, and everybody's messaging so many messages over there.
Gosh, too many comments.
Yeah, too many comments. Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah.
So go ahead, shoot your question.
The main point is that the whole idea of concept is based on intent. Intent at sending and intent at understanding. And if those intents are not matching, you will always get stuck. You can't prove that they are understood right in any case, and that gets worse with AIs, LLMs most of all, because they don't have any intent. I'd be curious what you guys think of that.
I think Marco want to say something on it. It
Oh
started
no,
with
no, I absolutely agree. And it ties back what I've been saying before. It's like it's not about getting a concept or a word out there. It's being able to communicate from one person to the next. And if you then figure out how do we talk to each other and can we agree upon the terminology that we're using, then you have what I would call intersubjective agreement. This is where in that little domain of these two people, that is how we define these concepts. That's how we use the concepts. It's all fine. And that is exactly the intent that is being captured by that little circle. And again, it's like Martin says, it's the LLM does not know the intent of that communication. And yeah.
Remco, you want to say something?
I want to add it because I think you're absolutely right, Marco and Martin. Yes, an LLM doesn't understand the intent. The intent is only existing when people are talking to each other. I have the intention to communicate this business term to you, and I can give you the extra information, what I mean with it, etc., etc. At the same token, if there's another person next to it listening to that conversation, or only partly listening to the conversation, it might not get the intent two people have, especially when the intent is kind of hidden because we know each other already. If we are talking about some context or whatever, and we both already know from previous communication what we mean by it, what our intent is, and someone else listening in and they don't get that part of the communication is still going off. And an LLM for sure, because I'm playing with it, I know is definitely not having that level of intent. So I think for me, what I'm trying to get out is not that I want to have a perfect fine data model because it doesn't do it. It just gives me a head start. I'm creating multiple models, which I can then explain or let them explain. What do you mean with this model? How does it reflect back to the business case given? And I am the person to say, okay, thank you very much for your assistance. Now I'm going to create the final model, which I think with the intent we're using, with all the communication, business terms, blah, blah, whatever, we can move forward. But I don't believe, I'm very scared for a whole bunch of people which are pushing out AI assistants nowadays with a big button, implement. Just push the button and then it's going to automatically create everything. I really don't believe in it. And even if people say, yeah, but there's a person, human in the loop, who needs to click the button implement, how many people do you know without really proper trained data knowledge and organization knowledge, which can really understand a data model which given to them? Oh, this looks correct. I see lines, I see tables, and I see whatever. It looks correct. Push. Especially on Friday afternoon.
Right after this,
After a margarita, yeah.
Lars, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting question actually, because I think you're right, Martin, that AI doesn't really have an intent on its own. So we need to provide it with two things, good context, but it also needs an intent. So we need to tell it what we want it to do. And this is why we prompt an AI. So as long as we can explain our intent in language in a way that is good, we can get the large language model to do things for us, produce SQL code or rewrite a modeling tool or whatever we want to do. But without our intent, the human intent put into the AI, it won't really produce anything. And another interesting thing that I think people forget is that between prompts, when nothing is happening, the AI and a large language model is basically dead to you. It wakes up when you write another prompt, and it's not even sure it's the same instance that is running at the other end. So it could be completely different instance of the model that you're talking to in your next prompt than the previous prompt. So the only way for the LLM to understand and keep track of your intent is that it's part of the context window So if your intent sort of falls out of the context window at some point, the LLM will lose track of what the intent was. So that has to do with prompting, but prompting skill is also good, and it's good to be aware of the fact that I even switch models sometimes right in the middle of like a session where I switch to a different model from a different provider, and it can surprisingly do very well and act as if it's the same instance or individual or whatever you want to call it at the other end. It's a continuous dialogue from my point of view, but it's not from the LLM side.
Shane, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is how fast this is moving. So with Claude now, you have a /goal where you can just give it a goal and it will go away and spawn multiple agents and try and achieve that goal for you. And if you look at the way humans use the prompting framework, you have people like me where I just write very small amounts of natural language text and hope like hell it does what I want, and then I'll go and review it and go, no, you stupid machine. It's actually me not prompting it properly. That's not what, and I'll iterate it. You've got other people that will actually write tests. Hey, this is what it needs to look like. You go away and do it and meet the test. And you get the third type of person that will create a very defined spec. So they might use something like superpower to go through and provide a very, very good spec that the machine's going to run with. If we look at that goal behavior and that prompting behavior, and then the fact now that with all the AI harnessing, we're starting to have persistent memory across sessions. We're starting to have policies, personas, ways of working to mean that I can pick a session up at any time and it kind of remembers the context. If I use Remco's example, right, which is, hey, we have too many patients coming into the hospital, I need more beds, right? Well, if I don't tell it, I mean that it can't go and build another building and spend millions and put more rooms in because that's the definition of beds it thought I meant. Yes, right now it's probably not going to go into a purchase order for $10 million or euros to build a hospital wing with a a construction company. But I've seen companies do some really dumb shit over the years. So maybe somebody will let that happen. So that's the thing, right? We are getting to a stage where we're going to give the LLMs intent. And if we don't give them a good intent statement, it's going to do the wrong thing. And if we go back to our behavior, if we can't actually agree what a data warehouse is, what a conceptual model is, what a concept of customer is, how are we going to agree what the intent or goal is for an LLM or an agent to execute? So, like everybody said, it's back to the same old problems that we haven't solved for decades. Those problems are just going to hit us faster and have a bigger blast radius with all the automation people are now starting to rely on.
Awesome. I think we are right on dot. We are 7:02 over here. We are 2 minutes on top. So anyone want to say anything before we close this session? Anyone? Nathan, Patrick? Anyone want to close this one?
As I said before, all of these very good data modeling people, I would like to have a session about how do you create a good definition. That would be really interesting to hear. All of you that works within data modeling, I mean, you have years of experience working with business and stuff like that. How do you do it, and what is your approach, and how do you qualify what is a good definition when you work within your process? That I would be really interested to be part of that kind of discussion.
Now, I would love to have a follow-up maybe in a quarter's time with the same guest list over here. We have quarter or so, and we can do this session on this one. Andrew, I think because I opened this floor for you. This whole session was for you, so I think closing remarks has to be you. Has to come from you.
It's been a lot of fun. I've learned something. I've learned quite a bit. And yeah, let's do it again. Absolutely. I think there's so much to know and so much to learn in this area. And I think because we're in very kind of uncertain times with the rise of AI, I think keeping to the fundamentals and basics of what IT is more important than ever. So yeah, let's keep these conversations going.
So to make this exciting, because we are all data modelers here.
Was it already exciting?
No, for the follow-up one. What I can commit for you guys, with you guys, I will try to bring Bill and Mon into our next session. So he has already committed one session with me. This is my 95th episode. I requested him to be part of my 100th episode. Maybe this follow-up of this one, we can make it the 101 and I bring Bill in Mon. But it'll be a little bit late. Difficult for Andrew, for you, but it'll be a little bit late for you, maybe 11 o'clock, somewhere there. Is that
As long as
okay?
it's not a Friday, we'll be all right. As long as it's not on a school night, we're good.
So
Hey,
which,
Andrew is starting this one, so we need to take in a little bit of effort.
yeah.
No, just kidding, Andrew. Just kidding.
Effort staying awake. Yeah. Okay.
So it should not be Friday, you are saying, right?
No, all I'm saying is if it's on a Thursday, Monday, Tuesday,
it should
Wednesday,
be
Thursday
Friday.
night, that's not as great. Yeah.
Let's make it Friday. Friday evenings I also like because next day is off. So yeah, so my commitment to you guys, let me bring Bill into this follow-up session. That would be great. Maybe in a quarter's time. Let me find Bill's time. Thank you so much again. It was a pleasure session. We all learn a lot. At least we know what business concepts, business objects are and what are its important. It's the important thing we all discuss to get into a journey of OLAP. I normally emphasize on OLAP because OLTP is already matured. Thank you so much for your time, guys. Everyone, have a nice rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.